Let's turn from there to our other big focus today, because the war in Ukraine appears to be triggering now a sharp surge in inflation across the world. Today, the data came from India. Retail inflation has increased to 6.07%, highest in 6 months. Experts now say a possible fuel price hike could mean a further jump in retail inflation. How is inflation now going to play out because of Putin's war in Russia? Take a look.
The Russian invasion of Ukraine spells trouble for Indian economy. Even though the impact of the war is yet to be felt here, inflation is rising. Wholesale inflation rose to 13.11% in February. It has remained more than 10% for 11 months now. Retail inflation for February has surged to 6.07%, the highest in 6 months. These figures don't reflect price rise fueled by the war. Things could get worse. The collateral damage of the sanctions on Russia is becoming visible across the world. Petrol prices have shot up across Europe. Queues have lengthened outside fuel pumps, with people expecting prices to rise further. The United States too is feeling the pinch. Petrol prices in New York are up nearly $1 per gallon since January, with the steepest hike happening after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. The monthly rate of inflation in the US hit a 40-year high of 7.9% in February, nearly 0.5% more than a month ago. The numbers nearly tripled since March 2021. Worse, an extended conflict threatens to cut off the supply chain of grain from Europe's breadbasket, while driving up food prices, pushing the world toward a new food security crisis. Nearly 30% of global wheat imports are from Russia and Ukraine. In the international market, wheat prices are already up 36% in just a month. Palm oil is up 11%, while corn is up 16%. Rice and sugar are up around 5%. For decades, the West has pushed for a rules-based global trade order with unfettered market access and low or no tariff barriers as cornerstones of a new worldwide mercantile order. Today, other countries, including China, are watching on nervously as Western nations and their superpower brands teach Russia a lesson in economics that Adam Smith may not have ever imagined. Bureau Report, India Today.
Is inflation now going to become the major crisis for India and the world going ahead? Saugata Bhattacharya, Executive Vice President, Chief Economist, Axis Bank with us. Ajit Ranade, Distinguished Economist, and Siddharth Zarabi, Managing Editor, Business Today TV with us. Let's get quick comments from you. Starting with you, Mr. Bhattacharya, your sense. Are we heading towards stagflation as some fear it? Or do you believe it's simply high inflation where the Ukrainian war, the longer it continues, will make things worse, particularly because of fuel prices?
Thank you, Rajdeep. So no, yes, there is a concern of a stagflationary environment, obviously, because till now we've managed to keep the energy, the spike in energy costs relatively contained because it still hasn't been passed on to the fuel pumps, the pump prices, but inevitably at some point in time, a combination of either the government taking on a cut in excise and cesses on fuel to make up for the OMCs increasing their fuel prices, which is a hit on the fisc, which crimps their ability to spend more. So whichever way you look at it, whichever way you slice the salami, it inevitably begins to look, even if it's not a stagflation, it's not complete stagnation, but the growth rates that we were expecting in FY23 will definitely probably need to be cut back. On the other hand, inflationary pressures is going to put crimp discretionary incomes of a lot of households. So overall, the situation is not as positive as we were looking at post the February budget.
Ajit Ranade, your sense, is inflation now going to be the big concern, the big headwind that the world is going to have faced, not just India? Every time I refer to India, people say, but it's happening globally. Do you believe India is in any way insulated?
No, absolutely not. India is not insulated because 80% of our oil requirement comes from overseas, and oil is currently at around, well, it came down, this very volatile, but it's way above $100. In the union budget that the finance minister presented just about 5 weeks ago, the assumption was something like $75 to $80 per barrel. And we're already at 100. In fact, oil shot up to $140 per barrel. So India is definitely vulnerable, but it's not just oil. Commodity prices, steel is now touched 85,000 rupees a ton, almost $1,000, when it should be 500, half of that. In fact, other commodities, metals, and
fertilizer prices.
Increasingly, fertilizer prices, a subsidy bill for 2020 or 2021, the fiscal year that just ended, is just ending, I guess, was twice of what was budgeted. The budget was 75,000 crores. It's going to be 150,000 crores, 150,000 crores. And we are entering a new fiscal year with high oil prices, which means fertilizer prices are going through the roof, and that's going to be a big challenge. And of course, fertilizer prices will not go up. If they go up, then that'll be inflationary to the farmer. But if it doesn't go up, then the entire subsidy burden falls on the government, which will be another lakh or 1.5 lakh crores. So any which way, as Saugata said, this burden of roaring international prices. In fact, your reporter talked about steep increase in wheat prices, in soya, in pulses, I think in edible oil. Of course, some of it could work to India's benefit because we can be a net exporter of wheat at a time when wheat prices have doubled almost. That will bring some relief in terms of foreign exchange earnings. But overall, the inflationary situation in India, we have to brace ourselves for high inflation.
Siddharth Zarabi, let me get you in on that. Is the government conscious of just how bad it could get? What is the general feeling? Are we now looking, at least in the short term, at a government having to combat inflation and find ways to taper down inflation? RBI likely, we are told, to raise interest rates?
Rajdeep, on your previous show last week, we had, contrary to what many people were saying, said that there will not be an immediate pass-through of crude oil prices to the Indian consumer. People were talking just after the election result, it will again be passed on. That hasn't happened. I repeat what I said, the government is very conscious, and the recent spike in crude and the overall energy price crisis, along with the food price crisis that is building up globally, is something that has the government worried. We know that there have been meetings at the highest levels in the government where the economic fallout is also being ascertained. The new fiscal will start in 15 days for us, but obviously the heavy lifting will have to start from now. One key point that we have to remember, in terms of our security for oil supplies, we may find a way around the ban on Russia. We may also find different ways of dealing with certain supply curbs. But for the Indian economy, this means once again uncertainty that started in 2020, and 2022 was supposed to be a better year. That has gone out of the window. The biggest issue globally is food prices, and Rajdeep, that is going to impact not the richest nations, but the poorer nations who are still to recover from the impact of COVID.
Right.
So it is going to be a very bad time from an economic point of view. Hopefully it will last for a short period of time.
You know, I wish I had more time on this, and maybe we'll one of these days expand on this, because we've just done an extended interview with Mr. Chidambaram. He took some of the time that we wanted on economics, but Ajit Ranade, Mr. Bhattacharya, Siddharth, we'll get you back, because one of these days we'll do a more in-depth roundtable on the state of the economy. Inflation remains a major challenge, but thank you all very much for those brief comments on the show tonight. We will keep tracking the economy. It remains, to my mind, the major challenge once again going ahead. Let's take a break. When we return, our Get Real India story from Madhya Pradesh and our image of the day. You're watching the news today. News without the noise.